Okay, so it is recording. So welcome everybody to join this event about epigenetics. It's quite a beautiful weather, so I imagine a few of you are enjoying the weather outside, and that's why I'm doing this recording to explain to you, I think, the very, very important aspect about epigenetics. What is epigenetics, and why is it so important to know about it and become aware of it? I believe it helps a lot as we are human being and we want to understand things. It helps a lot to understand how our body is working. And epigenetics is quite a very young field where they do scientific work and where science has found out that our genes have more our social circumstances and our social life has more impact on our genes that we would have had expected years prior. So what you can imagine is, to make it very, very simple, first of all, I want to explain how the cell is. So you can imagine like a cell is like a circle. And in the cell, we have this nucleus, which is another circle, a small circle in the circle. And in this nucleus, we have our genes. And the gene informations that we have comes from our mother sides and our father sides, because we are made, any human being is made by a sperm and by an egg. So once the sperm and the egg comes together and they start to multiply, they share their information. So that's why every human being has half part information of the mother and half part information of the father. And these cells duplicate. And every cell has a nucleus where the DNA, where the gene information is inside, and has the cell wall. I would like to make it very, very simple. And you can imagine that our body is made out of billions of cells. So what happens is these cells replicate and replicate and replicate, and each cell, you can imagine, is like a small fabric. So every cell, even though, when we're going back to being a baby, we multiply and we multiply our cells, and then the organs start to become differentiate. And even though the organs differentiate, the cell information is still in the nucleus. So every cell, every organ has the same origin of information that has the cell, when once the semen and the egg um, um, mixed up. So this is like the basics information about the cell. So what I want you to understand is that we have the genes in our nucleus in the cell, and you can imagine, for example, like a round circle, this is the cell, and in the circle there's another small circle, and in that small circle, which is called the nucleus, we've got these gene informations. Prior, science thought that um, science thought that our gene information is imprinted in our genes, and we have like that's a fact, and there is the information of the disease that we might have, etc., etc., and that's it. So we feel, or we felt kind of like, it's genetic and I cannot do anything about it, and we feel kind of hopeless or powerless, without any power, once we have a disease and we try to overcome that disease. But epigenetics has found out something. It has found out that on these genes, in the nucleus where we have our genes, the gene information, it's only 2% that have an impact on either we have a disease or we age, or and a disease is getting activated or not. And there are these 98% that is outside of this gene information where we have an impact on. And this is how we perceive life. I would like to say it that way, but I will become more concrete, and I would like to make an example with plants. So imagine you plant a plant. So you have the soil and you have the seed, and the seed is like our egg and our semen. Like when they multiply, we have the information. And in the seed, we have the information, for example, for an orange tree. So we put the seed in the soil and the seed starts growing. And it has the information about the orange tree. But it depends on the water, the soil, the nutrition in the soil, on the CO2, how do you say? CO2, um, and also on the sun, how this tree is going to grow. So it is not only the information in the seed, but more important, it is if we have enough water, if we have the perfect amount of sun, if we got enough nutrition for the tree. And of course, plants also need love and the loving. So if we have a look at the human being and come back to the human being, it is exactly the same thing. So we have our genes, we have the cells, and we have our human body. And we now know that all cells, including even the brain cells, replicate and rejuvenate, can rejuvenate or definitely replicate. So what happens is, being a baby, we get pampered, we get the nutrition, we get the milk, the parents take care of us, and mostly at the beginning we have lots of positive impressions of feeling loved, being loved. Everyone is smiling when they see us and they're happy. And what happens is, once we grow up and there's some expectations from our surroundings, the parents, the friends, whatever, and we get more and more adult, there are some expectations, and we not only have positive um, experiences, but also negative experiences. And what happens with these negative experiences, they are perceived by us. So what I want to say by that is, um, we've spoken about the plant, and now you think about the human being. So we are in our body, we have our mind, and there's the soul, and we feel. And then we have the surrounding. The surrounding means it's the way that we nurture our body. Speaking about food, we have the oxygen. How much oxygen? How do we breathe? We have the water, which is important. How much water do we take to us? How much do we take about that? The movement, our body movement. But also what we have these relationships towards other human beings in in a loving relationship, in a sexual relationship, or in the family relationship, or in the friendship. And at the same time, we have relationship and we have work. And then at the same time, we have the finances. So we have, like, the plant needs the water, the sun, the CO2, the soil, and the nutrition in the soil. The human being is involved in a lifestyle where he has all these different, let's make it sections in his life, which has an impact on that human being. So if I receive, and the way I receive and perceive my experiences is what now happens with the body. And now we come back to the epigenetics. So what happens is, for example, very easy, you meet someone and you fall in love with that person and you just feel happy and everything is awesome. So what happens? You see someone, you like that person from the outside, and then you get to know each other. And in this period of time, what happens is your brain is expressing these, in German you say Glückshormone, in English you say lucky hormones, which is, for example, oxytocin. I will only make the example with oxytocin. Of course, there are different kind of hormones, but oxytocin is the most strongest hormone and the most powerful hormone. So whenever you're smiling, whenever you are grateful, whenever you feel loved, whenever you have positive um, experiences, you really, your brain, through what you perceive, your brain is releasing these powerful hormones like oxytocin, and they go into your blood. And now we come and we have a look nearer. As I explained before, the cell, which is very simple, we have the cell wall, the circle, and the cell wall, and inside we have the nucleus. So I make it very simple because I want everyone to understand it. So what happens is this oxytocin, which is a hormone, but it's also made out of molecules and proteins. This one goes to the wall of the cell, and what happens is there are receptors, and these receptors click on with the oxytocin, or the oxytocin clicks on with the receptor. And what happens is that there's getting some information into the cell, which is starting a transaction so that the nucleus where the genes are in either gets activated into information that produces proteins, because what I told you at the beginning is every cell is a little fabric, and what the cell's mostly fabric is proteins, and these proteins are the ones that activate or inactivate, let's make it simple, for example, a disease or the immune system, suppress it or not suppress. So it depends on the hormones, or it's not only hormones, there are different enzymes and different factors, but it depends on what we perceive from the outside world, at work, in our life, in our relationships, in our family of origin, for example. It depends on what we perceive, what our brain is producing of hormones, so that it goes into our blood, and either it is something positive like oxytocin, the lack hormone, or if we have stressed, if we have something, we have stress at work, or we have a fight with our partner, and we don't feel appreciated, we don't feel loved, we don't feel understood, what happens is that we have stress, and our hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, the stress hormones, the flight and fight hormones, they get activated, and again they check on the cell wall, on the receptor, but it's a different information because it's a different hormone. And this hormone gives the cell a different information. It goes into the cell, gives a different information, and there's a different cascade running, which gives a different information to produce different proteins, which either, for example, suppress the immune system or activate a disease, or. And so what why this is so important, and why I think it's a beautiful clue which every human being should know, is once we realize that it is all about how I feel, that has so much power on what is working in my body. Once we realize that, we really can make an impact and make a change in our life. We can make conscious decisions on changing how we feel. So let's make an example. For example, you've got diabetes, and they told you that you're not supposed to eat sweets, but you love sweets, and once in a while, or you always eat sweets. What happens? Every time you eat a sweet and you know you're not supposed to eat it, you might have a bad conscience. You might feel bad, or you might think like, well, I'm doing exactly the wrong thing, so you feel guilty. These are feelings that, again, in our brain, we have the pituitary gland, which is here, somehow here behind, in the brain. So the hormones get released that you know are, have something to do with the feeling of guilt, or with unhappiness, or frustration, because you're eating something you're not supposed to eat, but you like it. So you've got this inner conflict, and being aware of that. The most important thing, first of all, is to become aware of it and to realize, okay, I can change. I can really change the way I perceive my life, and I really need to. My body is asking me to be a happy person, to live a happy and fulfilling life. Um, this is because I really wanted to make it very basic. This was my idea of explaining epigenetics. Now I've seen that Sarah came in and Hannah also came in. I'm going to stop the recording, because as I want to ask you if you have any questions or make it more complete.